This is the Environmental Protection Commission. This is the regular meeting and public hearings Wednesday, April 2, 2025. The first piece of business is new business, EPC 10-2025 PL 25-46, 14 Cary Road, J-Cross, I-Cross, to construct a residential addition, drainage, and related features proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Cary Lane, approximately 790 feet east of Leeuwarden Road, and is identified as map number 8, lot number 15, zone is R1, and it is more or less 1.1245 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to our agenda this evening. Starting the process to acknowledge its receipt, to establish if a public hearing is warranted, to evaluate the merits of the application, and to solicit some of your preliminary comments if you have any. Staff has been to the property and will be generating a list of information needed to move forward. And that's where we are with that.
Any commissioners have questions or comments? No? Okay.
I just have one.
Sure.
Is there going to be a basement under the addition?
Oh, I don't know.
This is just, it's just very ever so slightly in the upland review area, but I was just wondering.
And then the question is sump pumps. Okay, so, thank you.
And I also didn't see anything relating to any kind of planting plan, so I'd like to know that.
Okay, moving on. EPC 11, 2025 PL 25-56, 160 Nearwater Lane E, Maxwell, to demolish an existing structure and construct a single-family dwelling, driveway, drainage, in-ground pool, and other related features in the special flood hazard areas and proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the east side of Nearwater Lane, approximately 300 feet north of Shipway Road, and is identified as map number 56, lot number 26. The zone is RNBD, and it is approximately 0.32 acres. And could you explain what zone RNBD is?
I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to the agenda this evening to acknowledge its receipt, start the statutory time clock, at which a decision shall be rendered, and establish if a public hearing is warranted to consider the merits of the application and to solicit any preliminary comments. This is a knockdown of an existing residence, building of a new single-family residence. There is wetlands on a remote portion of the adjoining property, and the upland review area extends up into a portion of the property. It is also a special flood hazard area. So the activities are affecting the upland review area and the special flood hazard area, and there'll be a considerable amount of information that's necessary to demonstrate compliance with the various, particularly the inland wetland regulations, but also those preliminary elements associated with the flood-prone area regulations.
All right, so they're on sewer down there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll see about that. Okay, well, that'll be interesting to see what happens. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No? Michael? Okay.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, getting to old business, EPC 02-2025 PL 25-6, 16 Arrowhead Way, D. Abrahamini, and S. Abrahamini, to construct stormwater detention basin and other mitigating structures in or within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Arrowhead Way, approximately 350 feet north of Dogwood Lane South, and is identified as map number 64, lot number 25. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.00 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the only reason this is on the agenda this evening is that there's extensions being granted in order to consider the merits of the application. So they are currently working on a list of information that the commission and staff.
So they requested it.
They requested a granting the commission a 65-day extension to, and I just wanted to put it on the agenda so we keep it in the. There's no action necessary.
Okay.
Did they provide any of the information we requested from the last meeting?
Yes, and actually they're taking somewhat of a different approach as a result of the discussion in trying to, it is essentially a drainage mitigation effort. And so they're taking a bit of a different approach with the engineer and the environmental consultant in order to address the issues. So, yes, they've worked on it, they considered it to be an alternative, and that's what they're pursuing.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on, EPC 31-2024, PL 24-177, 275 Middlesex Road, P. Gallagher and A. Gallagher, to construct an in-ground pool, terraces, drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands. The property lies along the north side of Middlesex Road, approximately 300 feet west of Holly Lane, and is identified as map number 9, lot number 67. The zone is R1. It is approximately 1.00 acres.
Mr. Chairman, what you have before you this evening is a draft resolution for a decision on this application. We spent a great deal of time at the meetings of January 8th and March 5th soliciting testimony and vetting the details with the design engineer and the environmental and landscape consultants. And as a result of that, the staff was directed on the conclusion of the March meeting to draft a resolution for the board's consideration this evening. Available to answer questions and can explain the conditions if need be.
Do the commissioners have questions or comments on the resolution?
Just glad to see the requirement about the fence posts being pounded in as opposed to this
That was a good
concrete.
idea.
I just want to bring up, I'm going to vote against it. It was just too much patio, too close to the wetlands. They put a little sliver of grass in there so they can extend that buffer even further. It doesn't sit well with me they're doing that. I just think this has got to put our foot down once in a while. So I personally, if they really need that spot to sun themselves, bring a chair out there in the lawn. I mean, they're going to be right in the wetland. Maybe that's where they like to sit, but practically. So I'm going to be voting no. I just want to let you know.
Sure. Hello, Michael, you recused on this?
I recuse, yes.
Okay. Peter, any thoughts?
No, I had the same question. We're talking about the patio portion all the way to the right. I did raise that at the last meeting. I think if I understood the answer at that point, it had to do with direction of the sun and how the sun sets or displays on this property. So I do agree with Bill Wright. It seems superfluous, but I'm not going to personally object to that extension of the patio at this point.
In doing my homework, I couldn't find the resolution, so I focused on the agenda summary report, which I sent you, Rick, my edits and comments. So my bad, and I'm more than happy post-meeting to look at the resolution, which I couldn't find in my packet. I didn't find a linkage to a resolution, like a conditional approval.
Oh, you got it though, right? Everybody else got it?
Yeah, it was
yeah,
up higher, it wasn't at the end, like it was like in the middle of the documents.
Yeah,
Done.
so I didn't do a good job with that, and as a result, I think I have more homework to do for you.
Carolyn?
So, I mean, there are alternatives, certainly, to Bill's point and Peter's point. I mean, they really didn't have to do as much patio as there is. I mean, it is a big project. However, they are removing that fence around the entire wetland that's keeping the wildlife out, and they're restricting it just, bringing it up just into the upland review area just outside of the wetlands. So I think that's good, and they are doing a pretty significant buffer planting up against the wetlands with all true natives, and I believe they committed to organic land care, if I'm not mistaken. So those are all positives. So yes, I would have preferred to have seen a little bit less impervious surface that close to the wetlands, but I just feel like what they're doing, in my mind, outweighs it. So I would support it.
Trevor, any thoughts?
I wasn't here, so I'm going to recuse myself from this. I watched the videos, but
Okay.
I'm not here, so.
Is there anybody else who'd like to comment, question or comment on this one? Okay, I need a motion. Jim?
To approve.
To approve the
vote.
resolution.
I move to make a motion to vote on EPC number 31-2024 with respect to 275 Middlesex Road.
I second the motion on 31-2024, permit to engage in regulated activity.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And 2 recused. Okay, moving on. EPC 03-2025, PL 25-11, 86 Delafield Allen Road, R. Schurzwissel and E. Schurzwissel to construct a pool house walls, walkways, drainage, and other related features within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the south side of Delafield Allen Road, approximately 530 feet east of Raiders Lane, and is identified as map number 70, lot number 43. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.508 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application that's going to be discussed this evening is to construct a pool house. The property is going to be redeveloped, existing dwelling to be knocked down to the foundation, reconstructed. They looked at things like the septic system. They have, there's an existing pool on the property that's going to be maintained. The applicant is seeking to construct a new pool house on the property to provide some accessory use to the facilities that are there. The property itself, if you haven't been there, is a pretty dramatic site. It's a waterfront property. It has inland wetlands on it and a watercourse, a very narrow wetland fringe around that watercourse along one of the property boundaries. But if you were looking at it in terms of what coastal resources are there, there's shorelands, which is the areas that that are essentially the developed uplands at higher elevations. You have freshwater wetlands, which again are around the perimeter, around the fringe of the watercourse that comes from Delafield Island Road and discharges into Long Island Sound. There are tidal wetlands along the base of some very dramatic slopes that have been previously identified, and they're down around the cove itself. There's coastal flood hazard areas, again, because of the topography of this site, that the flood hazard areas are very narrow and close to the cove itself. And of course, the estuarine abatement, which is essentially the open water. As I said, the property is currently developed, it's vacant, single-family dwelling, the pool, an existing septic system and utilities, and other features. So we're going to be really focusing on the pool house this evening. The pool house itself is going to sit close to the existing pool in a sloping space. There are some big trees around the property. There's some slope that drains down to the edge of wetland. And the applicant is tasked with demonstrating that the pool house will not adversely impact wetlands, watercourses, and areas of resource. Water quality is an important consideration. Drainage is a consideration. Sediment and erosion control, and for unavoidable encroachments or impacts, the board will be looking at the value of mitigations that are being proposed. So just in summary, there's been a site development plan that has been developed for the pool house. If you note that they are essentially stepping the pool house into the hill. It's an interesting design. The upper floor is at the upper grade closest to the house. The lower floor will step down the hillside and exit at grade at the lower elevation, utilizing the slope to its advantage. The affected areas are generally comprised of both developed spaces and adjoining woodlands. Setbacks of about 34 feet to the wetlands and watercourses are going to be maintained. The overall grade change of the building is relatively low. Cuts and fills expected to be in the vicinity of 1 to 2 feet. There's some small lengths of retaining wall that are proposed. We have received the wall detail, and the applicant reports that 3 trees of size are going to be lost as a result of the development. About 2,100 square feet of the upland review area is estimated to be either temporarily or permanently affected. The issues relating to drainage and water quality, there was a drainage report done. There's been a plan that's been provided. Essentially, the drainage report notes that there will be increases in runoff. However, de minimis, and they discharge on the property into the sound, and they rely on the near infinite storage of Long Island Sound to attenuate any kind of impact. In terms of water quality, the applicant has moved forward with a plan to provide a dry well, and the preliminary plans for that dry well have been developed. There's a basic sediment erosion control that's been provided. There is, one of the questions that raised by the commissioner was about the existing pool equipment, and they will be demolishing that pool equipment, or not demolishing, but relocating to the basement of the building itself. So any concerns that you had about any kind of discharge, even though it is, I think it's a cartridge filter now, are further mitigated by placing it inside the building. Interesting, with the pool house itself, there is no internal water service for like a kitchen or a bathroom. There'll be no kitchen or bathroom in it. They are running water to it, but for an exterior spigot for the pool. There's no sewage disposal because there'll be no bathrooms and no drainage on the inside itself. So if you looked at the plans carefully, they show electric service and they show a water service going to it, but there'll be no sewage disposal, and there's no internal facilities that will be utilized with this project.
They're certainly within the right to do that. Why are they not?
They have done extensive testing for septic, and I'll let the engineer and the applicant talk about it more, but the site itself overall is pretty constrained. It's characterized by a ton of exposed ledge out there. There's a lot of slope. They were searching to make sure that they had enough septic and reserve area on site to serve the dwelling as opposed to an accessory structure.
It wouldn't be prudent to force main it back to the main house.
You know, we'll let them discuss that, but the applicant, from what is reported, is happy and acceptable of the fact that it's essentially a building without kitchen and bathroom facilities. The drainage and water quality reports were evaluated by the town's peer reviewer for engineering matters. They have some de minimis things that need to be addressed as part of perhaps a building permit process. But they can get further into that if need be this evening, but it probably is not ultra critical at this point. Alternatives, they did talk about alternatives that they considered. The location of the design of the pool house was driven by the slope, the extensive areas of ledge, and the location of, there's existing retaining walls around the edge of the pool. The pool equipment, per the recommendations of the commission, have been relocated, and they've been relocated to the basement. The There's been modifications to the planting plan in response to the commission's requests, and there's been some modifications to the location of the connecting utilities as to avoid the root balls and masses of some of the more significant trees on the property. And those are, many of them are lying in the upland very close to the house itself. A landscaping mitigation plan has been prepared, and the purpose of it was to seek to enhance the spaces between the pool house and the wetlands and water courses as a means to improve the overall filtering water conservation values of the space. And it's they introduced a significant number of trees, shrubs, and ground covers, all true natives. And they've also added notations in our areas of interest about non-synthetics and deer repellents. They have, again, if substitutions are needed, that they must be under the supervision of both the landscape designer and staff, and must be true native. They've also gone and added protective fences around trees of value in the development envelope. Again, back to the thing with the relocation, very important relocation of the underground to protect the trees. Originally it was going right along the edge of the trunk, and they moved it to the drip lines. The applicant is here this evening. I am available to answer questions. We can go from there.
Is the representative for the applicant here? Podium's yours.
Yeah, I think
Come on up.
Rick did a great job summarizing the project. I mean, I'd just like to add that we really did try and have...
Sorry, yeah, just for the record.
Sure.
and the
Rob
report.
Metzger, representative for the applicant, who's also here, Raul.
Are you a certified engineer in this?
I'm a licensed architect.
Okay, there we go.
Also, Jim Rotundo, who is a licensed engineer, is the civil engineer on the project. He's also here tonight. Yeah, I just want to add that we really did try and keep a light touch with this pool house. There's really one logical location for it. This I don't know if you guys have been to the site, but around the pool, the slope falls away quite dramatically, and really towards the back of the pool, there's almost a flat area where the pool equipment is currently, and that is sort of the logical place to put the pool house. And we really tried to shift it away from the wetlands as much as possible. There's a approximately 4-foot retaining wall that we basically pushed the pool house up against, and that's where Rick was describing the split level nature of it, where you will enter from the higher lawn at the top of the retaining wall, and then actually you'll go down a few steps to the main level of the pool house and out to the pool terrace, and then the basement level, which will be used for pool equipment and storage unfinished, will actually empty out to grade as the grade falls away. So yeah, we're hoping it's the least intervention possible to get the program that my client was after, and yeah, that's as Rick mentioned, there's quite a few measures in place for stormwater detention or stormwater treatment, and repopulating the wetlands with true natives.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I want to focus a little bit on the stormwater runoff that we were just talking about there.
Sure.
Mainly because of that steep gradient that goes down to the stream. So it'll go into a dry well.
Correct.
Assuming you can get through the ledge to make a dry well.
Yeah, I'll let Jim Rotundo speak.
Got any borings on that one? 'Cause that could be a tough one.
Please identify yourself and...
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Jim Rotundo. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Pereira Engineering, with our office is located in Shelton. Yes, as far as the stormwater management, with this project, other than the new roof runoff from the pool house and some minor extensions of patio areas, we're not creating any new impervious surfaces on site. So all that runoff will be collected within the roof leaders and discharged into a dry well, which was sized to retain the stormwater quality volume. From there, that will discharge into a level spreader, which has been sized so when this discharges, it'll spread out the flow, and it'll discharge down the slope with non-erosive velocities. As far as, we did do extensive testing on the site. We didn't do any in the area where we're proposing the dry well. We still have to do that. In that area, there are underground utilities, or I should say, there's an underground propane tank in the vicinity. Looking at the nature and the characteristics of the soil, we're confident that we should be able to get that in there. We're proposing right now a 4-foot deep dry well, but there is areas that if we do hit a restrictive layer, we could go in with a shallower system. It'll increase the footprint of it, but it'll bring it up from any restrictive layer that's in the soils.
Okay, so that fills up in a big rainstorm. Level spread area will dissipate it out, but then you're right at the edge of that pretty much cliff. Do you have any kind of a riprap behind that in case that level spreader really starts ripping?
Well, if you look at that slope, there's a lot of ledge and actually some riprap right in that area.
Okay.
So I think just naturally, it's pretty much stabilized. And as I indicated, the length of that level spreader was designed so it does spread out and discharge at non-erosive velocities.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Maybe a question for both of you guys. I'm looking at the survey right now. Are all of so just to be clear for the record, are the existing walls going to remain intact?
Yeah.
Aside from so that's the first part. The second part is, aside from the southeast, the southerly section of the pool house, that's effectively the only part of the retaining walls that you're going to be demolishing, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. In fact, you can see, actually.
No, and you've added new steps because you're plunking a pool house on top of the existing wall.
Correct, yes. So here you can see the existing wall. Grade comes up to meet this wall. It continues to fall away as you get closer to the sound. So this wall here will be removed and the patio will be extended. That's a new wall to support the steps. And just right here, this is the existing approximately 4-foot tall retaining wall that I was speaking to earlier that will be modified to turn in and meet the foundation of the pool house. And then really the foundation of the pool house acts as retaining wall for the rest of the run until it meets the patio.
Right. So I haven't been to your site. I look forward to maybe taking a look at this one particularly. But would it be a correct assessment that a common man could walk into the backyard and say, hey, where would you stick the pool house? And this would be the location that 9 out of 10 people would say that looks like a good spot?
I think 10 out of 10 would say, yes. There's nowhere else really to put it, so.
And I'm sorry, is this a 2-story pool house?
Well, it has a loft and it has a basement unfinished, as I said, a walkout to the lower level.
So 100% traditional subterranean foundation?
Yeah.
Okay, so story and then story and a half above grade, effectively? Okay. And are you saying that the pool equipment will be located inside the basement?
Correct.
Okay. So on the survey where there's that's the prior pool equipment or the existing pool equipment?
I'm
looking at the survey. I'm just looking at the survey.
Existing condition survey, yes.
Yes.
So if you look at our site, any of the site development plans, you'll see the dotted outline of what you're seeing now is the pool equipment location to be removed.
Right. Okay, so per the existing survey, I just want to be clear here though. But by the way, you're the first group of professionals that have been before this commission in a very long while that have said, hey, let's build a pool house. We'll actually stick the pool house equipment in the basement,
Yes.
which is the most logical place because your equipment is going to last a very long time.
Sure.
So it's a brilliant idea, and I'm all for that.
Yeah. And I'll point out that it currently is entirely in the wetlands upland review area. We're moving it.
Are you going to have to sump the basement though? Do you know whether you're going to have a water condition in the basement?
Not to my knowledge, and anything that, you could daylight obviously to the slope, but I don't think that there's a high water table there that would require that.
No, I'm not familiar with what type of pool filter system would be in there.
No. I'm talking about the pool house.
For the water
Are you
tank.
gonna definitely have
Oh.
a sump pump in the basement of the pool house?
As far as groundwater infiltration?
Well, any water infiltration.
Well, there shouldn't, based on our soil testing, we didn't encounter any groundwater, or even modeling, any, indications of seasonal groundwater. So from a groundwater standpoint, I would say that, no, you would not have a groundwater issue.
So is there a reason why you wouldn't have Coltex abutting like a leader leading to a bunch of Coltex right next to the pool house to mitigate the stormwater?
Well, we're proposing a dry well, which is as similar as the Coltex.
Right, but a dry well and intrinsically a dry well and a Coltec are different, right? The dry well is going to hold the water longer, and the Coltec is probably going to be able to permeate the water better.
No, they're both infiltration measures. The dry well has been around forever.
Correct.
Yeah, the Coltec is a proprietary system. The concept behind them is both the same. Water is discharged into the chamber, it's retained in there, and depending on your system, you may have a high level overflow, so when it reaches capacity, it'll discharge, which is what our dry well system is designed for. Or if it's all straight retainage, the water will just collect in there and it'll dissipate out. So it's just a matter of what type of measure.
Is it easier to maintain? Is there a reason why you went with one over the other? So take a step further, as you had mentioned that the soils are actually not that great, okay? So we're just gonna use the dry well, it's gonna fill up with water, and the level spreader is just gonna overflow down the ledge on its way via whatever natural riprap or whatever the topography is. So is there a reason why you went with that over a traditional concrete galley or Coltec system?
Well, the dry well is concrete. You mentioned concrete galley. Your galley is square, your dry well is round. It's the same thing.
So you're
Now,
dropping a concrete galley in?
A concrete dry well.
A concrete, excuse me.
Right,
a
it's
concrete
circular,
dry-
correct. And the reason we did that is because it's a smaller footprint to provide the volume we needed. Now, I had mentioned that if there's any kind of restrictive layer, we could go with a shallower system that would increase the footprint because we'd have to supply that same volume to store. So if we could go round and a little deeper, that's a smaller footprint. If we have to raise that up and say, go with a 2-foot, 24-inch high Coltec or a similar product, and that's actually more linear, it would be a longer system, but shallower.
Again, I apologize, I haven't been to your site. We had an application several months ago on a property on Gorham's Pond, and the engineer and the landscape architect came up with a plan where there was a substantial buffer to absorb and materially retard the sheet flow of water from that development. From going into the pond.
You're talking a surface type of
Yeah, correct,
filter.
planting.
Right.
So would it, between the architect and the engineer, and/or your landscape architect, would it make sense to have a planting area that would act as a buffer to the wetland from the level spreader? Or to direct that water into, I'm not saying like a rain garden, but it could be a rain garden, I don't know, or direct the water into that?
See, in the area that we're dealing with here, we have that slope, so we're kind of limited with space. The feature that you just spoke about, a vegetated filter, you really need a lot of room to install something like that. We don't have really, along the side of the pool house, there's maybe about a 15-foot flat area there before it slopes off.
Sure.
So you really don't have the opportunity to kind of discharge that water through a grassed or vegetated filter before it will go down the slope. The other thing is that with that type of filter, your best vegetation there a lot of times is just lawn. So it'll retard that, and I know what you're going to say. You
I
can do plantings.
disagree, because a
You
lot
can
of
do
people
plant-
haven't done that. They've
No,
done what I'm describing.
I agree with you. I'm not saying no, but that's one of the ways, because that actually will slow down your runoff and allows for the water to infiltrate, remove any pollutants and so forth. Our area there is not conducive to that. Again, and the other thing with that is if we went with a rain garden, it's not conducive to vegetating it, just to lack of sun in that area. So I don't think we could really establish a good vegetative base to provide the filtration that's necessary, and the volume also.
Well, your idea is just to sheet flow the water. To keep it very simple, is your idea is to just sheet flow the water. And my idea is to have some type of vegetation to absorb some of that sheet flow so it doesn't run down into the wetland.
Well, the purpose of the dry well is to, as you say, absorb that water. Because the water's going to go into the dry well, and it's going to stay there and infiltrate into the soils. So that's the stormwater quality volume. Once that overflows, that's going to go through the level spreader, and then that'll flow down the slope. So we're talking infiltration, we're just talking different ways of doing it. It's basically the same concept.
Oh, okay. What I would ask you to look into is, I understand your concept of your dry well. And what I'm saying is put something between the level spreader and the wetland, the water course. So when that overflows and it pops, there's vegetation to absorb that sheet flow when it overflows.
Right, okay. We can see what we can do. That's an existing vegetated slope right now.
And just to be clear, so the generator, the underground propane tank, the pool equipment, the pad that's on the pool equipment, and the wood fence that's in the existing survey, that all goes away.
I think we're actually planning on leaving the propane tank to serve the pool equipment still, but otherwise, yes.
Do you think that you need to replace the pool? Or do you know for a fact that it's just going to stay there, or is
The propane tank?
Yes.
I wouldn't say that definitively, but I also don't see any reason why we would move it.
Do you know what size the propane tank is?
You know what, I don't. It only serves the pool equipment, so I'm guessing it's maybe 500.
It is underground also.
Yeah. It's under.
Right. No further questions, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just on the dry well, is that indicated in the schematic here that we're looking at? I'm having trouble seeing it.
You will refer to.
And I was looking at the 2408 site plan revised 325, and I'm not finding
This is
Grading and utility?
grading and utility plan.
ah,
And you can see it right here off the.
all right, let me get that. I'm still having trouble seeing it in the submitted documents. I don't see it.
What are you looking for?
Grading and utility plan?
You looking for the dry well?
Yes.
It's just to the right of the pool house.
I was on the site development plans.
Site development, grading, utility?
2408, site development plans of revision 3425. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
we're-
what I was looking at.
Yeah, I don't think it's in there.
I don't think it's in that one.
That's the original one.
No, it has proposed pool house.
Why not propose, this one is,
2408, site development plans revised 325.
Yeah.
25?
grade 25.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to bring it up.
Yeah, why don't you bring it over here?
That would be helpful,
Thanks.
sure. So, here we have it. Northwest corner.
And what is the material that's going to be on top of the drywall? Is that going to be a natural surface, or will that be a concreted surface?
No, it's a natural surface. It has a manhole. There's actually a detail as well.
I got you.
Right here, that's typical.
Yep.
Can you say?
Yep. So the top allows for clean out?
It does.
All right, thank you. No.
Just one question though, I mean, just a point of, no question, a point of clarification. The roof leaders to the dry well, it drains into the soil, infiltrates into the soil, exceeds a certain capacity will overflow to a level spreader spread out along the slope. But the whole point of, and it still is fairly native between there and the water course, pretty distant too. But the point of the planting plan is to bulk up the planting that's in there. So there will be a greater amount of native vegetation between the discharge from this dry well and the stream.
You knew what I was talking about.
Yes.
Does this pool house need sump pumps? Are we gonna have additional discharge? It sounds like the soils aren't that great. So
I think what they said was, based on what they have examined, that the soils were great in terms of where they found soils, otherwise they found rock.
Well, right, but are they gonna, is the GC gonna be like, hey, we got the dry well, I'm gonna put the sump pit in this foundation, and then it's just gonna get piped to the dry well?
Well, I think.
Which would be okay, but, like, guys, are you gonna put a sump pump in this thing?
No, I can't imagine why it would be necessary. And, I mean, even that, the concept would be the same, but you wouldn't need a pump because you could flow by gravity to.
You can daylight from there?
Sure, yep. Let me show you.
But then you've got a plan for that.
Well, I don't think that will be necessary, but the lower level of the pool house opens to flat grade here. The basement
Oh, you're
level.
saying, the basement walks out to daylight?
Correct, because of the way the topography is there.
The hill is like
I
this
didn't
going
see
down to
the
the water
elevation.
course. The
No, I
top floor.
comprehend.
Yeah, okay.
I think it would be apparent with a site visit.
Rick, all I would say is if there's going to be, if we included that if it's a full 8-foot stem wall and it's in a condition where there's water, if I was a homeowner, I'd say, hey guys, let's be serious. Are we going to put a sump pump in it and then just incorporate that into the engineering? Full stop on my end.
I mean, they would have to plan for it if that's the case, and they would have to discharge it to a separate system to attenuate.
Right, so as it relates to, okay, so look, the engineer says we don't need one, that's fine.
Could I just clarify one thing? It's been, mentioned that the soils aren't that great. It's not that the soils weren't great, it's just that there was ledge is shallow on the site. So we were doing a lot of test holes to look for a septic system for the pool house, which we were unable to do. We found an area which we found a code complying B100A area, so we could build the pool house, which is a requirement of the health code. But as far as the overburden on the ledge, it was a nice loamy soil. So it's not that the soils were bad, it was depth to ledge on the site was the issue.
Jim?
I have no questions for these gentlemen. I do have a question, it's more internal for Rick when we're done here.
Okay.
Okay, so you have committed to removing the invasives by hand, and I noticed, I visited the site, and I noticed that like some of the wineberry has already been cut, and there's a lot of winged euonymus that will similarly. But is there a follow-up plan once these are cut, like after year 1, year 2, and so forth, going forward to ensure that they don't repopulate?
We haven't drafted one, but we could if that's a condition of approval, sure.
Okay. And also you will be clearing the water course of debris. I noticed there are a lot of leaves in there particularly. That will be cleared out as well?
Well, we asked for brush to be removed in the wetlands. I don't know about the water course proper, but again, if that's something you guys would like to see.
I mean, yeah, normally water courses are supposed to be cleared of leaves sort of routinely. And then I noticed that the true natives were swapped for the cultivars, which is really good, and that substitutions must be true natives. The deer repellent is non-synthetic. One thing is there is a double silt fence, and it looks like in some areas it's kind of falling down. I noticed there are hay bales kind of keep, but the fence itself is kind of sagging a little bit. That's something that should probably be kept an eye on. And then the stormwater and maintenance plan, the language in it is strong, which is good, but it doesn't actually identify the responsible party, and we usually like to, so that the homeowner knows that they are actually the ones who are responsible for maintaining that. So that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I mean, given the scope of the improvements that are planned and the limited size of the additional impervious space, I don't have any questions.
Any of the commission want to have a follow-up? No? Okay, so Rick, I think we direct you to write up a resolution. There's some conditions that were mentioned that we can follow up by. So we can include that in the resolution for next time. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Hey, Rick, one quick thing is maybe I missed it, but because the project is large, I would suggest we leave it to staff approval, identifying stockpiles, keeping to the stockpiles, keeping the stockpiles from eroding into obviously the wetlands or the CAM area, et cetera, et cetera. Tree protection, wattles.
They're doing the tree protection.
Whatever staff sees fit, just to keep the site tidy during construction.
We got after.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item of business is EPC 04-2025. PL 25-15, 6 Bishopsgate, J. Kim, to construct a residential addition, 3-bay garage, drainage and related features, approximately wetlands and watercourses, and open space/conservation easement areas. The property lies along the west side of Bishopsgate, approximately 380 feet north of the Boston Post Road, and is identified as map number 45, lot number 31-3. The zone is R1/3, and it is approximately 0.926 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the application before us is for the construction of a garage with residential living space. The space that's being affected lies essentially over the existing driveway. The areas that are subject to regulation include wetlands, watercourses, conservation easement, and an open space designation that was for the rear of the property as a result of the subdivision. The applicant intends to, again, confine the addition to generally the existing pavement, and it encroaches within the open space. No, it doesn't. It encroaches within the upland review area. Property's not in the special flood hazard area. The wetlands extensively to the northern portions of the site. About a third of the site is inland wetlands. The uplands are in the bottom 2/3 of the southern portions of the site as well. The applicant is tasked with demonstrating for the commission that there will be no adverse impact on wetlands, watercourses, and the other areas of resource, looking at drainage, water quality, and the value of the mitigative measures that have been proposed. A site development plan has been developed. Just for the record, there's no direct inland wetland, watercourse, or conservation easement encroachments. The areas, again, are pavement or lawn. There's setbacks of no less than 14 feet with certain components of the project. This doesn't exceed what's existing. Overall grade change is low. Cuts and fills not expected to advance over a foot or so. About 2,743 square feet of the upland review area will be temporarily or permanently affected by the development. No trees will be lost. There'll be no significant individual or groups of trees that will be modified as a result of the construction. The issues of drainage and water quality have been raised. The project engineer has done a drainage analysis and a plan. The applicant intends to take portions of the roof, pipe it to an existing system that drains out to the road, and a very de minimis portion will flow from gutters overland through a river rock kind of infiltration trench before getting to the inland wetlands. There's a very de minimis, I think it was in, let's see, which was it? I think there's a decrease in overall site impervious as a result of the construction itself. The applicant has completed, the project engineer has concluded as a result of completing this project that there'll be no adverse impact on drainage in the adjoining properties. In terms of water quality, they have that river rock system that for those portions that are direct draining to the wetlands, they've given a sediment and erosion control plan. And we'll talk in a second about the mitigative measures that are proposed in terms of landscaping and other enhancements. The engineer did talk about alternatives, and more so how they developed the site. They wanted to keep it on the existing pavement to reduce the overall amount of imperviousness. In fact, by doing so, they're reducing by 153 square feet. They looked at other locations, but it actually involved more encroachment into the regulated areas to pull it away from one side of the wetlands as opposed to the other. The mitigation plan includes the removal of a shed that's sitting in the upland review area that's been installed on the property. They're removing accumulated debris. There's a lot of downed trees and brush and debris in the back. And they're introducing a numerous number of trees, shrubs, and ground covers to enhance the space, filter the runoff, displace some lawn, and restore some of the areas that were affected by the unpermitted shed. What was important at the time of subdivision is that they created a stone retaining wall that's really pretty effectively separates the developed uplands from the conservation area and the buffer and the wetlands that are situated in the rear of the property. That's going to be maintained. With that, I'm available to answer questions. That's the general highlights of the project itself. Matt Pappas here this evening to talk about further details.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Popp, landscape architect, Environmental Land Solutions. I prepared the mitigation plan. Just briefly, just like to add one or two things. The site is fairly level through here, so we're not really concerned about erosion during construction. As Rick noted, we do have that existing demarcation feature, that boulder stone wall that protects the wetland and a wetland buffer. The lawn is right behind the house. There's a small lawn area here. In this corner where the shed is, it's a little bit of debris, an old shed, so that's going to get removed and the shed gets moved to here.
It's going to be moved where?
Excuse me?
It's going to be removed from its current location?
Yeah, it's going to get shifted from here to here. So we've got two plans side by side.
Okay.
So it gets removed from here to here. Here's the addition. In this area right here, there's again a little bit more debris, fence, scattered debris. So that would be removed with the project. We do have. Let me get to the mitigation plan. We just left a little bit of a lawn area to get around that house, the new addition, to get to the backyard. We have plantings along the property line here. Right, currently the driveway here, there's a little discharge. The water kind of just flows off the site. The shed is over here. We're proposing, a tree and 12 shrubs. The next shed gets relocated back to here. This whole area back here remains in a natural state. There's a little water course that flows this way in the back, but it's a fairly nice wetland for kind of a downtown area. I think that is it. When you're out there, you think they have a big front yard, but their front yard is actually the part of the cul-de-sac for the road. So so the driveway extends here. What I do like about the project, right behind the addition, right here, there's a little bit of driveway, the current driveway that gets removed, because that's fairly close to the wetland area. It's a small area. And I'm just here to answer any questions.
Bill?
Yeah, Joe, could I ask some questions of you, since you worked on this a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks, pal. I know you don't like this one. So, you're very, very familiar with this area, and
Excuse me, can you identify yourself first for the?
Yes,
for the record?
Joseph Canis, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. We were the peer reviewer retained by the town for the review of this application.
thanks for coming up.
Sure.
So you're super aware of what's happening back that whole area.
Yes.
As a flood-prone area. Every house, if it doesn't have any infiltration, is contributing to that. This house has all their leaders going into a system, I guess, that goes out to a storm drain, which is another overtaxed area in all the storm drains in this area. So I can't understand why we can't step this up and put some Coltac, so we get some infiltration in this situation, and we start piece by piece trying to relieve some of that issue up in that salt box area.
Okay, let me just take a quick look at the plans. It's been a while since I last looked at these. Let's see.
The second plan is my plan.
Oh, okay.
That's why we
That's it,
know.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Fortunately, we don't have the drainage plan here on the board here, so I don't remember specifically, but,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
no, understood.
But we're both very aware.
Right,
How
right.
this piece is probably like this.
Right, I mean, you know, the application as is, right, I've written 2 memos on this, and the last one was on March 24th. It does meet the requirements of the town's drainage stormwater regulations. But that said, there's also a provision in there that also encourages applicants to go above and beyond if it's possible. There could be some opportunities for some additional chambers there, but the base plan as it is does meet the regulations.
Right, thank you.
Sure.
But I would highly hope and expect that we would go above and beyond, especially in that area. I wouldn't expect that in a lot of other locations, but in an area like that. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Michael?
I understand Bill's point. Just to be clear, there's no change in the existing dwelling, Rick? There's no change to the existing dwelling? Is that correct?
They may be, you mean additions to the dwelling?
Yeah, correct.
Well,
Like the roof, the existing roof is remaining as is.
I believe so. I think that their addition is a new garage, and they're going to be, from what I understand, they're going to be renovating a portion of the house, but I think that's mostly internal. It's going to connect to the new garage, and there's going to be an addition above the garage space for like a playroom.
So, Bill, are you saying that in addition to any water attenuation off the garage, you'd like to see it from the house?
If possible, yeah, because right now it's going into a storm sewer system. That whole storm sewer system, which ends up in Seagate Road, is overtaxed. And so, we're not letting anybody else put their storm drain into their water coming off their property into storm drains. It was built that way, it was okay. So here's an opportunity to make it a little better, and I'd rather see it, all that water going in there and none of it getting in the storm drain system. And when we get a big rain, everything's overtaxed in the storm drain system. And it would be nice if it all went into not going in there, down into that system.
What is the distance of the closest corner of the garage to the wetland?
I think it's 14
14
They
feet
did it
according
to
to
the
the...
14 feet.
And the zoning regulation only requires you to add additional drainage. The zoning effectively only says you have to add additional water attenuation when you add roof surfaces.
And they talk
Meaning,
about,
like, if you add the garage, you don't have to put liters feeding Coltex for the whole house.
they talk about new site imperviousness, so they have a threshold for a full drainage report and analysis of 1,000 square feet. This one is actually a diminishment of site imperviousness by 153 square feet. Because they're putting almost all of the new garage and addition space is sitting on the existing driveway. In fact, beyond the new garage, there'll be driveway that's removed. That's where they lost 153 square feet.
Sorry guys, is your stormwater management determined on impervious, not, because you could have a patio that, you could have like a concrete patio that is impervious and don't have to have stormwater management for that patio. But if you build a house with a roof, that house has to have stormwater management. You have to account for your runoff off that roof into your
You still have to
stormwater
account.
management system.
You have to
So what I'm
account.
saying
You
is
have to
if
account for it.
you,
You have to account for it.
You have to account for
It's
that,
impervious
yeah.
surface.
well,
Patio, if you create a patio, and that's impervious,
yeah, but that just,
no, but
okay.
it runs off the impervious, it's gotta go somewhere. So that has to be accounted for when they account for the increase in impervious surface. We've had a bunch of those that have come to and said, well, we're putting a patio here that is pervious because of this, or it's not pervious. Well, that's an increase in impervious surface
I'm
that has to be
sorry,
accounted.
I'm wording it poorly. What I'm just trying to get at is this is an application where there's an addition for a garage, okay? The house currently just dumps all of its water into the sewer in the street, okay? Now that we're putting a garage in the upland review area, very close proximity to the wetland, right? So it's a judgment on this commission's behalf, and a way to mitigate for any, because we're a flood erosion control board as well, if we're looking to mitigate any stormwater or improve any stormwater management, does it make sense for the applicant to look at what Bill was just suggesting? And/or will zoning require them to say, hey, you're adding more than 50% or a specific amount of square footage of the roof? I think Joe answered the question, though, that they're not required to add more.
No, it doesn't matter if you have a roof.
Stormwater.
It has to do with the
Detention.
difference is the
Detention.
delta is in the impervious surface. So,
No, I would add here, it says in Rick's report that the water table is at 20 inches. So if the water table's at 20 inches, I'm not sure how much.
Well, I know.
If you could put a Coltex in, okay, the obvious thing is that the Coltex is going to fill up with groundwater. Mr. Hydrologist, correct?
Correct.
So if you put a Coltex in there.
No, I understand that.
It's going to,
I understand. Okay.
Again, Matt, Bob, again, the reduction in the 150 square feet of impervious surface will be less, runoff from the site.
Okay. I understand, just making a
Yeah.
point to my friend Bill here.
There's got to be a way to
There's
do a little better work out
But
there.
haven't we, since we're talking about it though, haven't there been many applications where there's been very shallow, high perk soils and the engineers, I mean, look, we've got an application where somebody wants to build 2 apartment buildings and blanket the entire site with Coltex to retain water. The Coltex, the company makes Coltex that are 18 inches deep. Sewer installers, build up the soils on a property so that they can make the sewer, so they can make the septic system perform. I mean, is there anything, the engineer's not here for this application, but is there anything the applicant can do to mitigate discharging directly into the stormwater system in the neighborhood that ultimately, I don't know if this is title or how it works, but.
Well, not all of it's going into the sewer system. I believe on the, what would it be, the east side of the
Right.
garage, it's going to be going down and, through the rock riprap and going into the wetlands.
I think overall on this one is, there's actually a reduction in the amount of imperviousness, and there should be a reduction in the
Right, I
amount
get
that's
it,
leaving the
because we
site.
took up the driveway, but I'm saying there's
But
still.
this area is very special. It's super flood zone. You're looking at it, they're doing a whole $7 million project because of that area. You got to make an impact. And if you don't do it on one and just let it go rolling along. How much does it cost to put a cul-de-sac in? Is it really that?
I'm not sure that
I
would
get-
work if there's,
Well, my point is, I'm like speaking agnostically to this. I'm saying, okay, I want to put a garage addition 14 feet from the wetland. That's A. And B is I have an existing condition where I'm taking my roof and I'm putting it into the street, which we could bring DPW in here, and they would say, we don't want people's roofs in the street.
We don't even want sump pumps going into the.
Correct. And that's creating a flooding condition that's backflowing into the wetland. So that's a bad thing. So I'm asking, is there something that the applicant would do to remove their discharge of the roof into the public sewer, or public, is it the sewer?
It goes
Or
into
is it the stormwater? Stormwater.
Otherwise, we get recip.
stormwater.
Right,
Right, well, both are bad.
Yep.
yeah.
One worse.
One is worse than the other, yeah.
Because I could argue maybe the garage doesn't need to be 14 feet from the wetland.
you probably would still end up with, something similar, though. You probably would be back here again. Again, there's a reduction of impervious surface on that. That's kind of the standard.
Well, yeah, Matt.
I mean, being fair, I could say, hey, guys, I want to improve the structure, I'm going to make an improvement. I'm going to peel up the driveway to put the garage on top of it. Okay, why don't you do that anyways?
But that's a good thing, though, reduction.
Yeah, you know what's better? You know what's better? Is
Keeping the driveway?
no. What's better is to actually try and if I have an engineer on site and I'm doing a renovation of an entire property, is to maybe think about how I'm not going to discharge directly into the town stormwater. And just think about it and come up with a proposal.
It complies with the town's regulations, we've heard from the town's peer reviewer.
Right.
But we can do better than that. I mean, this is
I
a
understand.
chance for really an improvement.
But it is in compliance.
Yeah, it's in compliance. Yeah, you can go ahead and do it, but it's, but our town is spending $8 million because of those situations, just up there, just so you know.
And it's marginally, but it is
Yeah.
better. It's 150 feet.
We don't need to beat this up.
impervious, but
But maybe they'll come back with something, I hope. Go on.
Were you?
Sorry. Other than electricity, are there any other utilities coming into this addition, such as sewer lines or water lines?
I don't believe so. I don't know. And I could check.
There's no new sewer or water lines.
is there going to be a bathroom?
House has bathrooms in, but is there going to be a bathroom?
Yeah, a new one.
I don't know.
Yeah, but is this going before zoning or planning and zoning commission? Or
I don't
Or
think
is this
it's
going to be approved by
determination.
staff? Is this approved by staff, or is this going to go through planning and zoning?
I don't think there's a trigger for a P and Z approval. I have to,
I guess what I'm getting at, and I think Trevor just hit it on the head, is this conceptually an ADU unit in disguise, or are we dealing with just a playroom only that's going to be dry without water, bathrooms, sewage?
but I don't know if it makes a difference from our perspective.
From our perspectives, right.
Not from our perspective. But then if it is going to be an ADU, it needs to go before P and Z.
Right.
So I'd hate to give our stamp unless we kind of knew the answer to that.
But you would give your stamp before it went to planning and zoning anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm just asking, to your knowledge, is the playroom a strict playroom? And without a bathroom, kitchenette, toilet, running water?
I've not heard anything that they're putting, a kitchen or a bathroom in there.
But from our perspective, it shouldn't make a difference,
Yeah.
because it's tied to the sanitary sewer already. Right?
Yeah, but
There's
I
still
would,
water service to that. There's still, I mean,
I would look upon this size a little bit differently depending upon the purpose. So I think the application is it's a garage and a playroom. But I would look at it, I would look at, that intrusion into the upland a little bit different depending upon the purpose of it. That's my question.
So, not to beat a dead horse, but I also was bothered about the explanation that the additional water would be going into the storm sewer. And it was mentioned, I just wanted clarification on something, because it was mentioned in a couple of different places in the narrative and elsewhere that stormwater management wasn't required because the increase in impervious surface is less than 1,000, and to Rick's point, they're actually decreasing the impervious surface. But if you look at the section 880B of the stormwater management, the applicability is, one, if there's construction of 1,000 square feet or more of impervious surface, but then another one is if there's submission of any application subject to review action or action by planning and zoning or EPC if the activity is within the jurisdiction of the EPC. So I did want clarification on whether or not they had to do stormwater management.
yeah, but they did. It's a trigger. Is it a full-blown analysis, or is it a report? So he did a report. He did an analysis for this as is, and what he said was, we're having a reduction in imperviousness. We don't have to retain anything on site, and we're treating what's there now by discharging part to
Right.
that
And
pump
they-
system, and then also
Right.
allowing some of it to go into the wetland.
Right, okay.
And he's drawn the conclusion that there's no adverse impact on drainage in the adjoining properties.
As per our regulations.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
So it's the 1,000 square feet is, no matter when we have an application, and if it's anything but the most minimus thing,
Mhm.
we have a report that we can fall back on and say, it's not gonna have an adverse impact on
Because they
drainage in
did the
adjoining
analysis,
properties.
based on their analysis, okay. All right, now I understand. So there's not going, one of the questions was, will there be a hammerhead? And there is not going to be, and I'm just wondering, is there gonna be enough room for them? I mean, from a practical standpoint, to turn around from the garage when they are leaving their property? I know that, like, for guests and so forth, they have that other parking there, but is that really practical not to have that turnaround space?
They may have to, back out of their driveway.
Yeah,
It's 30, like 2 feet wide, right at the face of the building.
okay,
Most aisles for parking lots are 24 feet in width.
okay.
So it'll be
Just-
tough, and hopefully they're not driving Suburban.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So-
Okay, let's see. Oh, there, so to the, again, it's to the east of the property, there's a yellow pipe going into the wetlands. I don't know if it's a discharge pipe, I was just wondering if we knew what that was.
That I don't. Is it right?
Mhm. Yeah, like maybe 6 inches, 8 inches maybe?
Let's see if I have a photo of it.
Do you know? I don't know.
Oh, I have a picture of it.
No, my photos don't have it. Yellow?
Yeah, it's right here. That type of pipe. I just was curious as to what it was. So there's, that little structure there, and then there's, this tree. I was just wondering if water is being discharged there. That was one question.
So where is that approximately? At the...
It's, yeah,
the
right
top
where
of
your
the-
finger
the
is.
top of-
Yeah, right there. Because the water from the discharge from the new roof is going to be going through like a rock, sort of.
Yeah, currently there's a leak off.
It's not going to be like a concentrated point like a pipe like that would suggest.
We can make sure that's,
Okay.
level, that there's a level spreader.
Okay. And then, now this is your area, the planting plan. The lawn that you referred to that's being reverted back to woodland over time, is that only in that area where the shed was?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of invasives, is Asiatic, because it's kind of hard to tell with the time of year, but is the Asiatic bittersweet the only thing that you saw?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. There may be some euonymus further, or burning bush further out here, but yeah, not in great quantities.
Okay.
So-
And will there be follow-up to ensure that it doesn't, because again, it's not easy to get rid of on the first go-round. Will there be?
Yeah, I think that you want to get rid of it, otherwise it's going to be growing in the trees.
Yeah.
I think aesthetically, there's a reason to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
so there'll be follow-up for that. And then in the conservation area, I noticed that you, which I actually liked, I mean, there's that big fallen tree, and you said you're going to be knocking the root ball down, and so you're going to be leaving the lawn.
I don't know, I think you might want to leave it, because I think
Yeah,
that...
I mean, there's a
but
lot of...
I was kind of like, put a note on the plan, just in case he changes his mind, that it gets approved or whatever to knock down, but...
Right, because it provides a lot for wildlife and so
Yeah,
forth.
right now, no, he didn't want to take, there's a tree, yeah, he put down a tree over here, he didn't want to take it out. So, but I just wanted to give him the option if he did want to,
Right, but
knock
by
it down.
knocking the root ball down, it'll like make it like kind of more, it'll be like flattened on the ground.
Yeah, but I think he wants to just leave everything,
Oh, okay.
so.
Okay. And I think that's all I have.
Trevor?
I don't have anything here other than what I've already brought up.
Are there any other commissioners want to follow up on something? Michael?
Bill?
No?
Yeah, minor thing. Hopefully this will go away if we put that Caltech in there. But on the plan, I did not see the actual line going out to the storm drain.
Yeah,
and
right. Yeah, I had
supposedly
that.
there's a pump there too, which is always interesting to me to have underground outdoor pumps. It's quite a maintenance thing. So none of that's noted on the plan.
Right, there's no
anymore.
pipe, you're right, the pipe doesn't show on.
So there should be, if you're going to keep that without doing my Caltech request, then I'd like to know a little bit
worries.
more about that pumping system, how it's maintained, how it keeps running, direction in underground where it's going, because it's not showing up.
I do have one item regarding the landscape plan. So Carolyn, Rick, Eric, I'd propose as a resolution for the application, approval of the application, to include more robust plantings on the easterly side of the addition. It's very close to the wetland. My concern is that somehow turns into storage, the garage, it's going to turn into storage and/or parking for an additional automobile. So I'd like to see, I think this is a great example where we've used in the past, a boulder mixed in with a big boulder, maybe one on each corner,
Yeah.
so that alleyway doesn't become used. Maybe more evergreen trees planted on the west and north, the northeast and north-south corner of the, something ornamental, again, which starts to close in that area. There's still going to be the ability to access the backyard from the westerly side of the property. So I'd like to see a more robust planting plan with the addition of many large boulders to keep that area, to mitigate traffic on that side of the house. And I default to you on that one.
True natives, plants.
The only thing is, I'm just not sure, I'm not pop where the, like, an evergreen tree would go, kind of in this corner. It's pretty tight now. I understand, like, the boulders, here to block, that, so there's not a motorcycle there or, a car parked there.
Is there a garage existing on the house now? Or like, it's the existing, like, what is it, easterly facing? Okay.
Yes.
All right. And it's a 2-car garage? 3?
Oh, isn't it
So it's 2 to 2, or is it 2 to 3? So, okay, so they're going from 2 to 3 spots.
That's what it is now.
Okay. So it's 3. So they'll go 3 to 3, so theoretically.
Do you have anything else?
No.
All right. I think there are a couple of to-dos on this one, Matt. The big one was mentioned by him. If you can go back to the engineer and just see if there's something we can do with the,
Add storage.
not mandatory, but hey, it's a reasonable, it's a prudent alternative in order to take something away. To take some of the water away from this. I'm not saying the whole house, but I'm just saying something here.
Yep.
Okay. The yellow pipe, I'd like to follow up on the yellow pipe.
Yep.
Okay, to find out what that is and where that's discharging. And she found one end, there's got to be another end. Okay, so I'm not sure, I'm not sure where that is. I think that's,
Right, how is the sump pit conveyed to the storm sewer system?
yes, the pipe that
Add the
the
pipe.
drawing doesn't have the pipes. Excuse me, thank you, Carolyn.
And the
So-
pump, and if there's any pump, how it works.
Yep,
It says there's a sump pump in the.
Yep.
yeah, there's a couple of, I'm sure there's a couple of.
Like add the boulder,
So-
Boulder
boulders.
demarcation feature.
We
Less
can add drainage
planting.
storage and beef up the plantings along the east
Yep.
side.
So if you can get some updated drawings with those, with the commission's comments here, I think that would be helpful. I don't think I'm ready to go, I'm not ready to vote on this yet personally, because I'd like to see some of these other things go forward.
And then, I'm sorry, just clarification that there's not going to be any mechanicals or, I don't know whether, would we ever care if there were, like, if there was a silcock on that side of the garage? You start discharging water from the house just out under the wetland there. Would we, and we're trying to make that a low impact area, so would we just maybe suggest that not be an area to place mechanicals or maintenance items along that wall, that vertical wall? And just get clarification that we're definitely not going to drop air handlers, propane tanks, generators there. The plan doesn't change.
On the east side, you mean?
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then just the last thing I have, I just want to make sure that the discharge point goes into like a level spreader instead of a single point.
Okay.
Good.
Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, there's no approval of minutes. Now we get to the public hearings. EPC 29-2024 PL 24-162, 3 Seagate Road, Joliet, to construct a private replacement timber bridge, which is vehicular, in and within close proximity of the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Seagate Road, just south of the Boston Post Road, and is identified as map number 53, lot number 58. The zone is R1/2, and this is approximately 0.36 acres.
Mr. Chairman, there has been extensive testimony at least a couple months worth of meetings on this application. At the last session of the public hearing, the commission had requested some additional information to essentially demonstrate that the absence of impact on drainage in the abutting properties during the various storms. They were looking for some additional details on the water handling, the potential additional site access during the construction phase. That has all been outlined in the agenda summary report that was prepared for you this evening. Adding to the record, there's been revised plans. There was 2 renditions of a hydraulic analysis that's been prepared. It's been vetted before. The town's peer reviewer for engineering matters has reviewed it and has endorsed the revisions, the impact analysis for this bridge. So that's where we really stand. There was some other considerations too, and they spent a lot of time investigating design thresholds for the bridge and what would be necessary to ensure there's adequate protection for the wetlands and water courses based on the design. And the reason why I say that is, we had secured information from the design engineer that the bridge is designed for pedestrian vehicles. It's not designed to sustain trucks, garbage trucks, fire engines, and those kinds of things. And what I've learned after consulting with individuals at the state building officials office, Michael Vitti, and our own local building officials office, our own peer reviewer, the fire marshal, and post 53 in emergency services, is that essentially there are no design thresholds for a single-family dwelling, a bridge to single-family dwelling. So the uniform recommendation is, if the individual chooses to pursue a bridge, as they have, then the bare minimum should be, also the town council as well, is that there should be some posting of signage, and the applicant is committed to posting signage having the limitations for, the type of vehicle or weight. We have to work out the details of that. So in terms of just some
But we're not in the insurance business.
Right.
Okay, yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. And I assume the homeowner has home insurance. So that's the person, that the state has said it, that there's nothing. We've talked to the fire marshal, et cetera. So it's basically the bridge in terms of weight is at the risk of the homeowner. And the town takes no liability to say that it's a...
The project engineer has also reported that the homeowner has consulted with their insurance company, and there's no effect as a result of the bridge design uniformly for a pedestrian vehicle, no implications for coverage or premiums and those kinds of things. So that's just one element. Maybe some other things that we should just confirm for the record is there was a site developed. There has been numerous revisions to the site development plan. My estimate, about 18 linear feet of watercourse will be temporarily or permanently affected, 72.8 square feet of wetlands, about 740 square feet of the upland review area. The affected space is generally developed space or ornamental planting along the watercourse. There was no expected additional loss of large trees. Overall grade change will be low as a result of the proposed construction. No impact on drainage. There's not going to be a change in the total site imperviousness and a follow-up impact on the amount of runoff. The bridge shall be constructed with a new top of deck at elevation 13.93 and the bottom elevation string at 13.22, providing a slightly higher deck elevation and larger hydraulic opening. And to assess the impact of what that slightly hydraulic opening, and I'll let Adam go into it further if need be, is that they did a very detailed hydraulic analysis for firstly a 50-year storm, then went back and revised it for the lesser storms. The result of that is that there's no adverse impact on adjoining properties as a result of that very de minimis increase in the hydraulic opening. That's been reviewed by the town's peer reviewer, and those conclusions have been verified. Just one, in the 50-year storm, the bridge deck will be diminished, will be inundated, will be submerged to some degree. Scour, there's been testimony provided, and there's been the analysis by the engineer that there will be no adverse impact as a result of potential scour of the space in the channel, and that's based on their examination of the soils and materials. We've already talked about the loads that are on the bridge. There's been a sediment and erosion control plan that's been outlined. It includes, there's been some additional provisions that have been added, including pumping provisions have been added to the plan in the event they need to pump as a resulting the abutments behind the existing. They've also utilized the sandbag measures to confine the space that are going to be working on. There's been storm contingencies plans have been upgraded, and they include things such as forecasting and what you're going to do would be relocating materials and securing space and all that kind of, and then follow-up review of erosion controls and et cetera. There's been some testimony, perhaps I'll let Adam go into it, about alternatives. And alternatives not necessarily meaning another portion of the site, because it makes common sense that you're going to be utilizing the existing bridge to put a bridge back. But there's been some testimony provided and some information provided about the use of a box culvert in lieu of a bridge, and how they chose the bridge because of its one cost effectiveness, the less disturbance that would be necessary. And although it's prolonged over a longer period of time than your typical box culvert, that they felt it was outweighed, the benefit outweighed the downsides of pursuing the box culvert. As at this point, there's no restoration or conservation enhancements proposed. Their conclusion is that there's not going to be significant adverse disturbance of that planted space along there now. And just, again, the town's consulting engineer, peer reviewer, has reviewed the revisions, the analysis, and has no further questions. That his issues have been addressed. If I haven't said before, they took the board's recommendation to provide at least a temporary pedestrian access that can be a plate over the water course, not for vehicles crossing over or anything, but a plate for pedestrian access during the construction phase. With that, I tried to summarize, there's been a ton of, if you look electronically or in our files, the amount of correspondence that's going before them, they're trying to ensure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and to vet all the things, including, our referral partners and what they suspect that the design threshold should be, et cetera. That's all part of the record. And from a plan point of view, since I have an accounting in here, that there was at least 5 revisions to the plans, again, being responsive to the commission's request, and there's been, what the engineering, our peer reviewer has pointed out. Even beyond this, again, there was a subsequent submittal having to look at the lesser storms and what the impact were. So there's a full range of storm evaluations. So I'm available to answer questions to the extent that I can. Adam Darius is here from the engineering firm, and Joe is here also, should there be any questions from the commission members.
Can I ask a question, Rick, before we start?
Of course.
So, Rick, you just sent us something a couple days ago about an analysis on lesser storm. I'm curious, why would you do lesser storm? Would you call it here a impact of less intense storms? Why do you even do that?
I think you want to evaluate the full range of storms.
Why do the lesser ones matter?
I think they do, because you can be impactful on those as well.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be just the giant storm what happens, it could be the lesser storms. So they went back and they took the flows for the 2, 5, 10, 25, in addition to the 50, which was the outward limits of what you study for structures of these storms. And we wanted to make sure, I wanted to make sure, Mr. Canis wanted to make sure, and the applicant wanted to make sure that there's no impact even in the lesser storms. You can conceivably, even it's a straight up drainage analysis, there could be an impact in a 2-year storm, but not in some of the larger storms.
Okay. I don't want to hog everything, but I will eventually like to talk with this gentleman, but 10 minutes might
Well, no, sure, let him speak,
Okay.
go through the changes, et cetera, and then
Okay, great.
I'll start with you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Arias. I'm with Anand Kirby. We have John Lynn, who's the owner. He's not here present. It's just me this time. But yeah, once again, I appreciate Joe for being just so responsive and very quick with helping us out with what we needed to do, looking at all the reviews, and we've addressed all of those specific comments up to the very last minute. So once again, I appreciate you, and I appreciate Rick as well, who's also been helping with that as well. Yeah, as Rick has mentioned, we've gone very extensively into all these comments that you guys also brought up to us on the last meeting as well, that you also wanted to be addressed, and just all the little comments that came up after all of these, the first revisions that we had provided for this meeting. But I guess just quickly, we have added, you'll see like a couple of changes for sure. We've added a couple of notes in terms of the construction staging, how that's all going to be happening in our general notes, but also we have a whole general construction staging, which is very, and you'll see like we're not very, very specific, because we also don't want to constrain the contractor to their means and methods of how they do construction, but we do want to give them a guideline of how exactly, at least the minimum of what is expected. But we have the construction staging, sequencing for that. We also have the storm contingency action plan whenever there's any storms coming. And I would also like to add that we're looking at storms of just 0.5 inches. So this is very common storms. And what we do note is that we also, before any work is continued after that, we would need approval from Rick before we do anything else regarding any work. But we try to avoid that, obviously, because as mentioned before, our work is supposed to be basically just the removal of the whole removal of the bridge is supposed to be, and the building back of it is supposed to be taking only a week. So it shouldn't be a lot of time. We would try to avoid any rainstorms in that regard, but we do have those plans just in case that does happen. As mentioned with the storm contingency plan, we have sediment traps that we've laid out as well. Not for the storm contingency, sorry. This is for the excavation of the abutments that we were proposing. So that's to remove any groundwater that might be building up in there. We don't want any sediment obviously going into the river and flooding. We already have issues with increased sediment downstream. So this would be handling that. It's basically just sediment traps would be pumping out the water from the excavation that we're doing, putting it onto sediment trap, letting it flow basically, and then let the water flow, but the sediment is ultimately trapped. We also see that we did put in a it's pedestrian access, temporary pedestrian access that is basically just a steel plate. That's very common. And this is just for typical construction pedestrian access to both sides. Before we do any demolition of the bridge, if the contractor needs to put any machinery, any large machinery, they would have to do that before they do the demolition. Keep it on the side for at least, what they build back the bridge, which we're expecting is basically a week. But everything else would have to be obviously through the pedestrian access, and it would have to be just smaller machinery that they could do that. Also, any concrete trucks, if the contractor decides to do it with concrete trucks, it would all have to be through the Seagate side, but they would obviously use the tube to just bring it to the other side. But we wouldn't, all those machinery would all be on the Seagate side, but also be very temporary. Outside of that, as Rick had mentioned, we did do our analysis with the HECRAS model, which we added to our stormwater report. And this basically allowed us to provide, based off our grading, we have we can create the cross sections of the channel of the river through different areas. And in our stormwater report, there's a page that basically determines which sections we are using to demonstrate the impact on those sections. So we have ultimately, I think it's six sections, but we basically focus on, at the very beginning, we do a cross section here and how the impact of the water is at that moment. And then basically, I think one before we reach the bridge, one right before the beginning of the bridge, one right before the beginning of the bridge, one right after, and then one in between once again here, and then ultimately at the number 5 Seagate Road to see what the impact is going to be there. And so ultimately, we do see a raise of the elevation of the water surface throughout basically the whole river, but then once we pass the bridge, it starts to lower it down, but ultimately at the 5 Seagate Road, there's no change at all. So your water surface does not go up, there's no adverse impact with that, and we, like Rick said, the impervious area and runoff that we're experiencing there's no increase, because there's no increase in impervious surface, and we're not changing any of the grade for the river as well. Anything else? The difference we'll see in the height of the bridge, we're still definitely going to see some water at the 50-year storm. That's going to definitely pass the top. It's going to overtop the bridge. And it's about 0.07 inches though, so it's not that much, but it still is going to be going over. But like I said, there's no impact downstream to number 5 Seagate Road. And it actually is a reduction of the amount of water that John Lang, the owner, was basically experiencing before. So he was actually getting like 4 to 5 inches. Obviously, the increase of the elevation of the bridge is reducing that amount, but this is only 0.07, which is not a lot of inches if we're talking about that. I think those were like the main changes that we wanted to really address. And I guess with we had looked at the alternative with coffer dams. Since we're going to be doing all the work for the abutments, for the excavation of the abutments, it's all going to be from above. We're just going to be pretty much setting up not a lot of disturbance around behind the abutments, and we're not expecting to basically go through any of the river bed so that the water can get in through there. But just in case some of that water does come through, we are proposing that the contractor needs to install sandbags in those areas just to prevent any of the, just stabilization of the riverbed as well, but also to prevent any water from getting into the excavation if that is a possibility as well. Once again, we also have those groundwater and basically the pumping out of the groundwater just in case anything comes up, and that'll be eventually thrown back into the river, but with cleaned out with the sediment traps. I think that was the main concerns we were looking at. So yeah, I'll just open up to any concerns you still might have after this.
Mostly going to work on your site plans you got there. So you were talking about your general construction staging as very general. You got to have more specific. You got to say you're going to have your equipment on both sides. Your excavation, you're going to have to say how the sandbags are put in there. And I'd like to see a diagram to show exactly how that sandbag operation is going to work. They're saying you're not going to have, when you dig up that 9 cubic yards on each side, you're not going to have a concern of water getting in there from the backside if you have a big flood. I don't understand how that couldn't happen. You're excavating all that material out to get to that old abutment. You're going to pour a new one. And during that time, you've got that pulled out and we get a big storm, water's not going to get behind that.
Well, that's why you have the storm contingency action plan, where we'll be basically forecasting. We'll be looking at the forecast and checking.
Forecasting in that stream, it happens instantly. When we get a rain, it's just ripping through there. So I would like to see a diagram on there of how the sandbags are going to be placed on the stream bed up to the top of the stream itself, stream bank, in a way so when that water comes down there, it totally goes around that.
So you just want
area in there. I mean, we talked about using sheet piling, but sandbags should work if it's done right. But I'd like to see an actual diagram how that's going to be done. You can't do it out. We got an hour before the storm's coming or 2 days. You got to have it in there right to start. I don't understand why it's such a big problem. And it's got to be upstream, obviously, where water comes and then it swerves around that whole project.
Yeah, I think with the mention of the note that the sandbags needs to be installed, I think that
Well, I'd like to see a diagram, actually. You've got diagrams for everything else from there, right? You've got around your pit where all
but just
material is.
placement. I'm just trying to understand like a detail of it, like
Yeah,
just
so
placing.
You
a bag
know how
on top
high
of the bag.
the bank is. You should have some kind of system that shows those sandbags going up to the top of that bank, where it starts before the water gets behind there. You just make a detail like you made a detail around the storage pits and stuff. I mean, that some thought has gone into it. That's what I'm worried about. The other thought, you're going to be out of there in a week, you said. Well, everything on here says it takes 28 days for the concrete to, be cured. So, what's going on with that? I mean, are you going to immediately, it says right in your plan, it takes 28 days.
For the full compression. You can
So
get
you're thinking
the majority
you can
of.
for that and then build right on top of it?
It takes about 7 days if you want to reach like basically the majority of your compression at that state. At that point, you're probably like 90%. So 7 days is like typically how long it takes for the concrete to get to a good state where you can start building on top of it.
We're comfortable with that? Okay, so.
I'm sorry, hey, Bill.
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Okay, so, for the neighbor's concern, right, for the record, have you put a timeline as to how long this construction will take place? Have you provided an estimated timeline?
Yeah, that's what we're saying with the week.
How long is that?
For the week, it's a week.
7 days?
Correct.
Okay. And the first thing that you're gonna need to do is pour some type of footing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how long would you anticipate to excavate for the footing, pour the footing? Well, excavate for the footing, stage for the framing for the footing, right? Then pour for the concrete, and then break down the forms for the footing. How many days is that gonna take?
That could take probably another week, I would say, for both, for placing and then removing.
So we just want, are you saying we just go from 7 days to 14 days, or you're still within your 7 days?
Yeah. For the bridge itself, for the demo of the bridge, it would be basically 7 days. For the construction, you're probably adding, if you're anticipating preparation and all of that stuff, you can probably add an additional week to that, but it's for preparation.
Okay, so what he's saying is 14 days of the stream being excavated.
Great,
I think.
but we still need to have proper protection.
No, I'm not just.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm just saying, I think if 7 days was the time that they were doing the work, I think that's highly unrealistic. Because what I'm saying is, I think for the commission to understand, and Rick specifically as the Wetlands Commission, is any adverse impact that you will cause during your construction. I think this is a prime example case study of an applicant that comes to the commission, and we're more or less looking at what the impact is going to be for the construction exercise. So I think from the time that it takes you to excavate, just for the footing, I think it's reasonable, for the time that it takes you to excavate, set your footings, pour your footings, let the footing cure, and break down the footing, I would say is going to be, and you have people coming back and forth, right? So you've got your concrete company who's actually going to set the forms and pour. He's not going to be Johnny on the spot. So you're going to have to wait for him to come back and break those forms loose, and you're going to have to wait for cure time. So I think just for your footings could be a 7-day exercise. And then are you doing additional pour on the footings as well? Or are you stacking rock? Or a combination thereof?
Oh, say that again, sorry.
For your walls, for the stem walls, for the bridge. How is that constructed again?
It's pour as well.
It's all poured, right?
Correct.
So then they're gonna have to come back, break the footings loose, and then form up on top of the footing, and the process starts again. So if I was a betting man and I was doing this, I would say I'm probably 10 days of just doing the concrete work. I haven't started any bridge construction. Well, that's part of bridge construction, but that would be stage 8. I would definitely let Joe Canas opine on that. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I do think, in fairness to the neighbors and to the project and for the town to protect the wetland, that all of your details should be methodically lined up. Because I know your contractors are not going to give the credence to the plan that a generalized plan would yield. So you're going to have to be very detailed of what your construction methodology and process is going to be, or they're not going to find it. And I would be remiss to mention, you can also have a very detailed plan, and you could say, I want the sandbags in this method, and they're still not going to follow that. But I could really bet there might be a gentleman who's going to be there watching it to make sure that takes place. And I would encourage you to follow his advice. And if you got to draw it in CAD how you want the engineer to build your wall, please add the detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I don't think it. And look,
it's
a penny wise, pound foolish, right? I mean, we're just talking, order of operation and preparation for construction.
Yeah, it's just in terms of, like I said, I think, and maybe Joe can speak on behalf of that, but we once again, we didn't want to specifically restrain the contractor with their means and methods, because I think this is all, within the general, even though it is called general, it's very clear on what we're expecting from the contractor.
Well, we are constraining them, right? We are constraining them.
And we want to improve on something we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, but their means and methods might be different, but as long as they're falling in line with our notes, that's really what we're looking for. We're not trying to force them. It's like, this has to be, exactly, 7 days. You gotta take out your forms, like putting notes like that.
What I'm speaking. Let me be more clear. What I'm speaking to is, if you're not gonna do the sheet pile to hold back the water in the event of a flash storm, right? And you're gonna use sandbags. You can't say, hey, stack the sandbags there. You gotta say, I want a four-course footing, stacked 4 feet wide, 20 inches tall, and then you can start to reduce the width of the wall to build your sandbag wall to withhold the water. You can't just say, put sandbags there. That's what I'm speaking to. And the second piece is as it relates to your construction planning, I think you have to be realistic about what the timing is, because the excavator and the concrete guy are gonna be tripping over each other, getting in and out of there. And then the last piece is are you gonna be present for that construction as on, and I guess does the commission stipulate as a resolution for approval is that the engineer is on site while the construction is taking place? I don't think this isn't the type of construction where the GC takes a picture and emails it to the engineer, and the engineer's sitting at his desk and says, yeah, that looks good. Maybe there needs to be
Yeah, it
something
would have
where you're
to
there
be
in the morning.
something
You're
with
there
like-
in the morning to set up operation, give your blessing on the work that was done, and then you come back at the end of the day or in the middle of the day. But
Yeah,
then you
usually
have a
with,
high
like-
touch. You have high touch on this. I think that would go a really long way with the neighborhood as well.
Yeah. Yeah, if that's something, it's not a current requirement, at least for, as far as we know. Usually with the building department, they might ask for a footing or some sort of concrete pour, and for the engineers to be present, and they need their sign off, like our sign off to do that. So I guess it's more of a building department question to see if that's something.
I think I would make a resolution as approval, is to let staff agree on the key milestones of completion of that project where you're in the field and you're signing off. I think that would be very integral to a successful completion of that. I have no further comments.
That's one more, and then I'll back well. The stockpiling. So stockpiling is toward the home. So you're gonna, when you're doing the abutment on the Seagate Road side, you're gonna have that machine going over that abutment, you're digging it out, bring that material up and put it into the stockpile, or do you have a truck that's gonna be taking that material away? I'm talking about, because you have a stockpile on one side, do you need a stockpile on the other side?
Once again, it depends on their means and methods. If they want to put the stockpile on one side, I think it's feasible. They could wheelbarrow across with, with the dirt that's excavated, put it in that pile. I mean, if the stockpile itself is really, once again, it's not like, it doesn't need to be exactly in that place. It might move.
Well, I'm just thinking, you got a stream in the middle, right? Does it make?
Correct.
And so if you're just going to leave this up to, I guess I'm a little concerned about if you're trying to dig over the stream behind something, you can't even hardly see that, pull out that material, drag, now you're in the air, and then dropping it on the other side. It seems like you're actually, waiting for a problem to occur as you're going across the stream again. It seems like if you're going to dig from both sides, then your stockpile should be on both sides, unless you have a truck to pull it out of the way, so. Again, I'm no expert, but it seems like it's a hole here, no pun intended.
I mean, if once again, I think it's more of a contractor, because it's possible you could do it that way. There's
no offense, but that's why it's been 5 iterations to get this through, because it's always like, well, we'll get a contractor and we'll figure it out. So this has been taking forever because it's the same thing. Well, when we get a contract, we'll figure it out. It just doesn't give me a lot of comfort level.
It's just the things I think, in my opinion, the things that we are focusing on right now are not things that you can just, that when you're in construction, that they're going to be set in stone.
I'll let you.
So in terms of the stockpile, if the contractor decide, the contractor can remove, I don't even know if he's going to be using that type of machine to excavate. once again. It's just, these are things that, like, if we start labeling and saying the contractor needs to use an excavating machine and put that in this stockpile that's on this side of the river, and it's like, we're not allowing the contractor to use their means and methods. And so we have, I think what we've put in the contract, in the plans is good enough. And if you feel like it would be not good for us to be there and inspect while they're doing all of this thing, so that there is at least some coordination, so there's some eyes on that, I think that would be, I would agree with that. I think this is a very sensitive place, and we're the ones discussing all these things and your concerns with us. So I think it would be, I would agree, like having us out there would be a good idea for us to be and do these inspections and basically get some eyes on the contractor and their means and methods and how they're doing things.
Okay. I think we could make a pretty easy, we've never had to split the atom on a stockpile here at EPC, but I think you could probably follow some like pretty simple rules. Is one, maybe it's not such a great location because it's so close to the abutter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two is maybe, I'm sorry, I can't see the compass direction. Is
We're facing south.
Okay, north, right. So
South.
maybe the stockpile just needs to live more north, somewhere on the site, okay?
Yeah.
If the contractor needs to stockpile material, maybe he scoops it up and puts it in a triaxle on the street and then scoops it back out and puts it where it needs to go. I don't know. So he's got one on the property, and then he has his ingenuity to work with what he's got going on. As it relates to the stockpile, I mean, as long as Rick is okay with it, I mean, it's gonna be wet, mushy, mucky stuff. Maybe it needs to have wattles around it and 2 layers of silt fence, so it doesn't scour out onto the neighbor. That would be my concern, is that you're not scouring your stockpile onto the abutter.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do in our stockpile, I think we do have double layer in hay bales or silk.
So then if you're comfortable
So,
with that, then
yeah.
that's it, we're done.
Okay.
How you guys?
I feel very comfortable on how this plan has evolved. And I think, well, I'll ask you this question, just want to be sure, I'll also ask Joe, because this is what gets me to the very comfortable level, is that substantially this bridge is a replacement of the prior bridge in design and material.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first question. And that, two, there haven't really been any material differences that would exacerbate the problem for the downstream neighbors. That's the second question. And I think this whole issue on methods and materials, if we knew who the contractor was and they were highly experienced and we had a lot of confidence, we probably wouldn't have to ask this. But I do agree with the suggestion that there should be some higher touch oversight of the engineer on the project, because we don't know who the contractor is and whether they're experienced or not. So those are my comments.
Combined with the very good comments of Mr. Wright, Commissioner Irvin, and Peter's thought right there, I also am most comfortable with the incredible additional work you guys have done. I found this stormwater and EPC report, I believe it's Division 3 that we're reading March 28th, extremely helpful and crystal clear. I'm fine with it.
Just a couple questions. Given that where the new abutments are going, the footings have to be designed to bear on soil having a minimum bearing capacity of 2 tons per square foot. And I think it was suggested by the town's peer reviewer that you do like a test pit, but I think the comment was, the response was, well, we've anticipated for like the worst case scenario, so there's really no need to do that, but why not just do it, just so you know what you're dealing with?
I mean, I think during the excavation, that would be the ideal time to check what soils you have.
Okay, so it's, okay.
And once again, the worst case scenario, we don't need to increase the width of the footings or anything that we have planned currently. It's accounting for that as well. So. I
Well,
mean,
don't
if
you have
we-
to like bring in other, like more dense sand or something and pack it in? And isn't that what I read you would have to do if the soil isn't the correct?
Not necessarily, as long as you have enough bearing area, which our footings, that's why we have it at the specific width as well. And once again, it's not a big load either, but the area itself is basically able to handle on the worst case scenario of the soils that we're encountering, which is more silty
Okay.
soils is what we're looking at.
And could you just clarify or repeat for the 50-year storm, by how much will the bridge be submerged?
0.07 inches is, at the 50-year storm, it'll surpass the highest point of the bridge by 0.07.
Okay.
Feet, sorry. So that's around it's times it by 12.
Oh,
8.8 inches, something like that, less than an inch.
okay, less than an inch?
Yes.
Okay. So given that, I mean, 50-year storm, I mean, they're not super uncommon. I know the materials are going to be pressure-treated wood and galvanized nails and all of that. Did you consider any other type of material that might be even more, water-resistant than pressure-treated lumber?
I mean, just in terms of, once again, it's supposed to be just a replacement. And the main goal was just to replace and just make it a little bit higher. So on that regard of what like the client's expectations, we decided that's going to be the best. It's the easiest to just redo and replace. And also in terms of cost, I mean, if you really, the replacements would be realistically probably steel just for conditions and like it to last longer. Which, I mean, it's not, construction-wise, it's less complex to just use the wood and replace. It's really, that's the main reason. Not really necessarily looking at how long it's gonna last, although they still would be.
Question.
They would, yeah, they should last, I mean, with good maintenance, and we're not, and we'll be putting signage once again for these delivery trucks and stuff not to cross as well.
Right.
So it's just gonna be just normal cars and, pickup trucks as a
Right.
worst case scenario. So you're not experiencing as much as you are in terms of loading, so it should last more than what it was, like what these currently are.
Do you know what the current age of the bridge is?
No, I just know it's been there for a long time.
Okay.
I'm not sure, I don't know, are you one of the neighbors who know of the bridge, how long it's been there?
It was probably last redone 40 years ago.
Oh,
So-
okay. Oh, so the timber does last, okay. Okay, great. Under the general notes on the plan, number 7 says there shall be no piping, conduits, hoses, or other materials which could potentially catch debris attached to the replacement bridge. So right now, it looks like there is some kind of, I don't know if it's like electrical wiring or something that goes under the bridge,
I
maybe
think
for
it might
lighting
be
or
like
something?
some lighting.
So that will not
So
be
that
there
will-
on the new bridge?
Correct.
That is not planned? Okay. There's pipes. There was a comment about, right, okay. So overland flow. Was the issue of that was raised by the town, our town reviewer, and the response was that it was considered, but that the effect of it was negligible. But then it's also mentioned in the project narrative that both behind and in front of the existing dwelling, the slope is characterized as moderate. So why wouldn't you consider putting in, perhaps some type of ground cover both on either side of the stream, maybe some ground cover that might slow the flow since it is considered moderate, and maybe, it wouldn't overflow as often.
I'm trying to understand which location are you talking about?
So, in the project narrative, it states that the slopes behind and in front of the existing dwelling, so I'm looking at the direction, so that would be to the west and east of the house.
Yeah, I guess just the characteristic of the
Right,
overall property, I guess.
It just seems to me like that's like kind of a, not a super expensive, and, maybe it won't help a lot, but it might help some. Is it not worth, putting in, trying?
I think, it's moderate, but it's still, at least for the majority of this, there is some slight slope towards the neighbor, but it's relatively,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking about further back, like closer to the house even, like.
Like a regrading in this area?
Not regrading, just putting in like some ground cover or something that might, when it rains heavily, the water is going,
Like
so.
some plantings and stuff, you're saying?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is the stream is fed both by the pipe that goes under the post road and water that comes overland. Am I?
Yeah, there's definitely some runoff there. Although you do have a lot of, there's a lot of time for the runoff to really go into the ground because this is all grassy area.
Right.
And they pretty much keep it well kept.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful,
It's,
yeah, I know.
and to be honest, it's not it's not like enough slope, I would say, in my opinion, where it's basically like the runoff doesn't have time to percolate into the ground either way. So, yeah, it's more of, if it's required, we can, but ultimately, we're not really increasing any of the impervious area. Like, we're not, and like I said, if you had concerns, there are no concerns based off our HECRES model analysis of even just the impact of the bridge itself doing any increase to the neighbors. So any of the runoff is just going to be the same runoff as that's at least just in this area that's sort of going into the neighbor. That's the same runoff that's coming in today, and we're not changing any of that.
Right, no, that I understand.
And the same water that is going into the river is going to be the same water.
Right,
that's
but I mean,
coming there.
given that for the 50-year storm, it's going to overflow by about a little over an inch, I think you
Yeah.
said.
But once again,
try to mitigate
your
that.
water level is still the same even with these proposed conditions as well. So we're literally changing nothing in terms of the water surface level.
Okay, all right.
Or even velocity as well. Yeah, even the velocity, we don't increase the velocity, so you're not increasing scour or anything to the neighbors either.
Okay, all right, that's all I have.
Trevor?
I don't really have anything, just to say, look, the structural integrity of the bridge as it sits today, obviously there needs to be something done. The lack of material change in what's being proposed, both in design and effect of this area is de minimis, if anything at all. So I don't have any questions.
Okay. Any commission member would like to, before I open it up to the public? Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? Going once? Any member of the public who would like to speak? Twice? Okay, thank you. Joe, would you like to comment on this?
I could come up and... Good evening. For the record, Joseph Canis, licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, retained by the commission for the review of the application. We did want to thank the applicant for providing significantly more detail on the application, which enabled us to make a finding that our comments in our previous 3 memos had been satisfied. So Yeah, and, obviously, the bridge does need to be replaced. They've demonstrated that there'll be no adverse impact in terms of hydrology and hydraulics on the adjacent properties downstream. Also, just for the means and methods, just to clarify that a little bit, one of the first things, as engineers, our firm makes us take these professional liability seminars, these insurance seminars, and one of the first things they tell us is you don't tell the contractor how to do their job, right? So, but that doesn't help you as a commission trying to evaluate what are the impacts, right? So really what we have to show as engineers is what is possible, what can you do, and then establish what are the guide rails for the contractor. So in doing that, right, that's how we, can get our approvals and work our way through the commissions. But when the project is bid out, the contractor selected, we always have the contractor submit a water handling plan, their temporary controls. That way we can review it against those guide rails, because the contractor might have a different take on how they can do things based on the equipment that they have and things like that. That's what we've done for our bridge projects. We did one up in Wilton, the pedestrian bridge over the Norwalk River there. And the contractor, we initially had a sandbag cofferdam. The contractor had a different idea on how that cofferdam could be built, and he used jumbo concrete blocks with polyethylene sheeting and then some sandbags. So it resulted in a more compact structure. So that was good. So that's the kind of expertise a contractor can bring. So, just as an example. So, we kind of like set the boundaries, and then the contractor comes in with, the final plan. And that, we could be reviewed with staff as well at the next stage.
Okay, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay. Considering that, close the public hearing?
We have to close the public hearing.
Okay. Jim, I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make that motion to close the public hearing with respect to EPC number 29-2024 with respect to 3 Seagate Road.
And second the motion to close this public hearing, 29-2020.
All in favor to close the public hearing? Thank you. Okay. Do we want to have discussion on this, or do we do it next time? What do you want, next time? Okay. In the meantime, all right. We'll close the public hearing. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
In terms of we have to
Well,
attend another...
I think what we're going to do is Rick, we are going to relook at this with all this new information. Are you going to write a resolution at that point in time?
I mean, you can have a discussion as to the direction you would want to go, like we did similarly in December. We could draft a resolution with conditions. You don't have to agree with it. You can make that determination.
We can get a draft resolution for discussion along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And any changes they might make on that plan that we would clarify some of the concerns we have.
We would list all those concerns that they'd have to
In the
address.
conditional approval.
Mhm. Nothing more can be added to the record at this point. So it's either based on the record, what we determine to be a positive or a negative, or a positive with conditions to ensure.
So we can condition it out at that
So
point.
at this point, if something wasn't changed to your satisfaction, it's approved or denied based on any conditions written.
Just based on the record. You can only make a decision based on the record.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, did you make a decision?
No.
No, they're gonna.
We
discuss it.
have to get a resolution.
That's what I'm saying. Are we deciding to present a resolution for approval? And then
With
we'll-
conditions.
With conditions.
With conditions.
Right, and we'll review that.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree.
That's right. Sorry.
Just take 5 minutes.
You want 5 minutes?
Yeah, just before we
Okay.
start.
Take 5 minutes. We'll be back in 5.
Thank you.
Channel 79.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Thank you, members of the public, for Your forbearance. Okay, we're going to open up the next public hearing, which is EPC 33-2024, PL 24-179, 8 Wildcat. C. Colker to restore a construction accessway and maintain a pool patio, walls, walkways, and other related features proximate to a pond and wetlands. The access to a property lies on the south side of Wildcat Road, approximately 750 feet east of Delafield Island Road, and is identified as map number 70, lot number 27. The zone is R1 and is approximately 1.4 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this is the second session of the public hearing for this particular matter. And we covered at the last session the submittals that had been submitted to date, the notice, and all the typical housekeeping measures that's warranted for a public hearing. Substantial testimony was provided at the March 5th session, and from that, the applicant there was a continuance of that hearing to allow sufficient time for the applicant to hit on the issues and concerns that were raised by staff, by our peer reviewer, and the commission members at that meeting. Generally, they were looking for some additional information relating to the engineer's analysis and impact assessment. If there was going to be information provided relative to the integrity of the retaining walls, looking for some additional improvements to the erosion control plan, looking at final stabilization measures for the slopes and drainage outfalls, making sure that they added the septic reserve area on the plans that has been specified by the health department. We talked about visual demarcation features, and I can report that in advance of this session that the plans have been revised. They have subsequently secured the town's peer reviewers' endorsement of the design and impact analysis. And I can go through and cover, just for the record, some of the things they looked at. And I made comments in this agenda summary of what they have addressed. There's some de minimis things that have not been looked at, like protection around some of the collection structures in the driveway, and maybe a demarcation feature for the planting scheme, which was a very detailed scheme. But I can go through it very briefly and get it on the record of what was done and not done. So the project, and many of you have been there, it's essentially an after-the-fact permit to, although there had been construction on the house that was outside of regulated areas, there had been construction above and beyond the actual improvements of the house that involved an expanded patio and walls and essentially a gazebo or outdoor space and fireplaces that had occurred on the property, portions of which fell within the regulated areas, including sidewalks and other improvements. Also, as the contractor gained access to the rear portions of the site, there was a haul road, essentially, or access way that was constructed, again, in regulated areas. So the applicant is seeking to, under this permit, is to restore the construction access way and to maintain the structures and features that they have installed to date, but demonstrating that they will not have an adverse impact on the regulated areas, on drainage and adjoining properties, and in fact come up with a scheme to mitigate for the impacts. And there was a very detailed landscape and improvement plan and essentially a wetland enhancement plan that has been presented. Properties residentially developed, has pretty extensive upland areas of varying topography and rock outcroppings There's portions of an open water pond either on or immediately adjacent to the site. There's, that pond is hydraulically linked basically through the house by a pipe, discharges at the rear of the property, where it becomes an open channel, wetland fringe areas around the pond and around the open channel as well. The process, the applicant is tasked with demonstrating there's no adverse impact on wetlands, watercourses, or areas of resource or particular resources, looking at water quality, drainage impact, and assessing the value of the mitigations that have been proposed. There was a site development plan that was provided. The encroachments affect about 1,700 square feet of the upland review area. There's no direct wetland or open water encroachments. The project elements lie about no less than 40 feet to the edge of the wetlands and watercourses, about 40 feet. And that space is generally comprised of existing developed space, manicured lawn. There's no new losses of trees that's being proposed of individual significance or groups of trees of significance and value. And further grade change is not expected. There's been some number of retaining walls that have been constructed to support the terrace space. I can tell you that we have not received an assessment of the walls, and the applicant is seeking to defer that to, as it comes to the CO on the property. Drainage impacts. This is the project where it's a pretty substantial increase in site imperviousness. The engineer has come up with a design plan in lieu of doing infiltrators. Felt it was appropriate where they are doing ripping up pretty substantial portion of the existing driveway and doing and making it pervious. The asphalt, pervious asphalt with an underlying bank of gravel material that is going to act as a holding area for the additional stormwater to mitigate the impact going off-site. Did a full watershed analysis, and those findings were put into a report submitted to the plans and report submitted to our peer reviewer for engineering matters, and there's been an endorsement of what has been supplied to date. There's been an erosion control plan provided. As I noted, some very de minimis changes would probably be warranted for protection of collection structures, the existing collection structures. The applicant went through, kind of an alternative discussion, but more so how he chose, and I'll let Mr. Finkbeiner discuss that, but how he chose to go with the pervious pavers as opposed to things such as infiltrators. Basically, access and disturbance were the major points in which he chose the pervious pavers. We made referrals to, in addition to our engineering review, we sent to the health department, and they've concluded that the only thing that they had needed was to have the B100 area reserve, say, depicted on the plan. They had a finding that the relative positioning of the septic system that exists to the new drainage filtration was suitable and appropriate. And they've also laid out that as long as the restoration of this construction access way was generally limited to scratching of the surface and stabilization of the soils, that they were fine with it. They have received information from the project engineer confirming that to date there's no appearance of any impairment of the system by tracking over it. The landscape mitigation plan, there was a pretty extensive landscaping mitigation plan to diminish the amount of lawn, enhance the native landscape features in the vicinity of the outlet, but more so around the edge of the pond and along what was the construction access way. And in this case, also, there was notations about true native, plant selection, use of synthetics for deer, repellents, et cetera. But also, there was a pretty explicit plan of invasive management and management of the spaces, the newly planted spaces. Just also as an aside, they have made provisions for stabilizing some of the areas of known erosion. And so I'm available for questions. The applicant is here, the design engineer and the environmental consultant are here if you have any further questions. I would note that if determination to move forward and to draft a resolution, I would seek to hit some of the remaining high points that the commission pointed out about the demarcation features, making sure there's a good recognition of where the water line is going to this property, so there's no conflicts with what is being proposed for the driveway surface. Some of the improvements to the sediment erosion control, but they're relatively de minimis. So I'm available to answer questions. The applicant is present.
Good evening to you again. The name is Peter Finkbeiner. I'm a drainage engineer for Dr. Kolker. The owner is with me. William Kenny of William Kenny Associates is here tonight as the landscape architect. And we were also asked to have present one of the contractors who could speak to some of the construction history, I believe you were asking about. As Rick has so well said, we had a number of issues from last month's public hearing to turn in additional information, and we tried very hard to meet all of those items. I believe we've answered all of the issues. The engineering issues are taken care of. I'll speak to you about porous asphalt if you'd like, but it was basically the best system I could choose to address the drainage mitigation. Porous asphalt has the advantage of being fairly shallow, so if you have a water table down below, you want to use a shallow system as opposed to, those Coltech units often get about 4.5 feet deep. This cross-section is less than 2 feet. So it helps to stay above the water table. But it basically acts the same as the Coltech system. Most of it is open stone. It just infiltrates the water that comes through the asphalt. Porous asphalt looks like regular asphalt, smells like regular asphalt, except it's full of holes. And the water just goes straight into the stone collection bed underneath. I'll be happy to talk, but I'm not sure it's necessary this evening. We are certainly here to answer questions.
Okay. Trevor?
I don't have any questions.
Carolyn?
I just have a couple questions about porous asphalt. I think it was mentioned on your site plan, the watershed contributing to porous asphalt is, looks like, is that coming from a neighboring property?
Yes, the peer reviewer asked us to take into account everything that was coming on to us from the neighbor.
So I think I read that the basketball court will be repaved also. So why not just put some of the porous asphalt there, since that's right next to where the runoff is coming?
Well, for one thing, the basketball court slopes up from the rest of the driveway, and we tend to look for the flatter areas.
Yeah.
We could certainly put the bed underneath, but already the asphalt area we chose, which is rimmed by stone aprons.
Apron, yeah.
There you go. That's almost twice the area we have to make up for in the backyard. So already we have an excess of a drainage, which makes it shallower. but there's no reason to expand the area of porous asphalt and the storage bed.
Okay. Okay. Also, you did do you incorporated a operations and maintenance plan to ensure that the porous asphalt functions as designed. But there are other things that weren't in here that, like, a homeowner should know, for example, who has a porous asphalt driveway, like, you know, not to use sand on it, and there are, like, you know, some other things. Maybe the operations and maintenance plan, I think, was just on the site plan and not like a separate document. Perhaps it should be a separate document and identify who the responsible party is, and just, you know, I'm sure probably the people who put the porous asphalt driveway in will have recommendations, you know, do this, don't do that, like, you know, do you have to shovel it, or can you use a snowplow on it, you know, those kinds of things. So I just thought that might be helpful to try to maintain it as it should be, so that it functions properly. And then the only other question that I really have is in the back, the two pipes that I think you had described them as like weep holes for the retaining walls, but they're not really weep holes because they're, you know, they're like pipes.
It's a perforated pipe that goes through the drainage layer behind the wall, and that is
So it's
the
more like
entire drainage
drain
outlet.
Then? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
And-
drainage to lower the hydrostatic pressure against the back of the wall.
Right, and those will be cut back and have like some type of riprap or
Yes,
stone?
riprap.
Right, put in front of them to slow the, because it looks like you can kind of see a lot of the, you know, erosion from the water coming out of the pipes.
I haven't been there since the pipes were established. If you say you see erosion, I'm a little surprised. I expected those pipes to remain completely dry.
Oh.
They are part of very standard design for retaining walls, but understand we're at the very top of the hill. And at the very top of the hill, you don't have a water table that builds up the hydrostatic pressure, but we had to put the pipes in. But if you tell me there's erosion, then that's...
Then maybe it's because there's like not, the lawn hasn't been reestablished and it's like.
We're waiting for topsoil and
Yeah,
seed
so
and
maybe that's what's
stabilize
instead of
everything
the pipes.
finally, yes.
And then just getting back to the driveway, there was one other question I had. So there are those two grates, and we talked about those last time, and you, they have like Belgian block around them. Will that, how will those be handled with the driveway? Like, will the Belgian block be removed and replaced, or will it be eliminated?
All of the stone in both the aprons and around the catch basins are going to remain basically undisturbed. So within those stone perimeters, including the catch basins, we're going to remove the existing asphalt and dig down and then bring it back up again.
Okay.
So the drainage structure, the two drainage structures you mentioned are going to remain presumably completely undisturbed.
Okay, okay. And they will serve as overflow for the porous pavement?
Yes, the lower one will be the primary overflow for that porous pavement.
Okay. Oh, and the only other thing I wanted to say is that when you did your revised drainage report, I really appreciate that you redlined it, because I can't tell you how many times we get revised reports from, and you have to like sit there and try to figure out what has changed. So I really appreciate, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, thank you.
Did you think
I
the
totally
same?
agree. Should become a standard on the thing. yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I had.
Okay.
I have no additional questions.
Peter?
No questions.
Michael?
No, I think it's, Dr. Coker, I think this is great. You have Mr. Finkbeiner and Mr. Kenny to help guide your general contractor to follow the plans and get the permitting in the building back under, typical process. And spring's around the corner, and you'll be enjoying this pool in the summer. So I have no further questions.
Amen. I'm good too, I agree with that.
Can I say one more thing? 'Cause Mr. Kenny was back there behind.
He's hiding behind there.
I
yeah.
didn't see him. I just wanted to say that your planting plan, I think I said this last time, but it's one of the best ones that we've ever had, and I really appreciate all the information that you put in it. And the only thing that I would suggest that would make it perfect is recommendation to use organic land care practices in those sensitive areas, because, you know, they're near the wetlands, because there will be a little bit of lawn in that area. That would be the only, but it was just really superb, and I just really wanted to tell you how much I appreciated it.
Thanks.
And it should really be a model for all of our.
So this needs to go on the bulletin board and, okay.
All right. Thank you. Are you Manny?
No.
No, okay.
Only a Jerry.
Oh, okay. No, because I got, you know, all right. I won't get into what happened. I was going to go do a postmortem as to what and who and like this, and I said, you know, it's 10 o'clock, and so I'll let it go. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak? No? Okay. Dr. Coker, thank you for coming in personally. I much appreciate. It's obviously you've paid a lot of attention to detail here. Obviously, you got, you know, more work. You have an expert with Bill Kenny, and I appreciate him because we on this commission respect his work. You also have to deal with the building office. Can't help you there. So I wish you luck in whatever you do there. I don't have anything else. I want a motion to close the public hearing.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing with respect to EPC number 33-2024 in regard to 8 Wildcat Road.
And second that motion to close the public hearing on 33-2024.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your inputs, guys. Rick, I think we're ready for a resolution on this, and
I'll draft one.
you'll draft a resolution, and whatever you said, there were some minor things outstanding. We'll condition that in the resolution. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. Okay. Jim Allard's favorite piece. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we close our regular meeting and public hearing of this Environmental Protection Commission of this evening, April 2, 2025.
And second the motion to close the regular meeting and public hearings April 2nd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Channel 79.